Ivy. And Sheridan.
Here. All right, wonderful. We'll now move to a pledge of allegiance and Mr. Squatter, could you please lead us in that?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We'll now move into comments from the floor by the public. Do we have anyone signed in?
No public comment at this time.
All right, thank you so much. We're now moving to approval of the agenda for July 22nd. Do we have any changes by staff on the agenda? Seeing none, okay. Looking for a motion.
Madam Chair, move we approve the agenda.
Okay, with a motion.
Second.
Second, any questions on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. That passes unanimously. We'll now move to approval of the minutes from our last meeting on May 6th. Are there any changes to the minutes from the board? Not seeing any. Looking for a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you very much. In a second. Any questions on that motion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The motion carries unanimously. We'll now move into our board matters. Item E1. Our CBA review and discussion of the current unsolicited proposals policy. Mr. Marietta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mike Larragetta for the record. A few board meetings ago, the board unanimously approved the unsolicited proposal policy as relates to sponsorship and funding. And senior staff had gone back and wanted to make a few modifications to that policy. Nothing in terms of changing whether somebody is approved or not approved, but more 4 items that we specifically identified just to be more in line with what we do on the special events committee side. And so the team came up with 4 recommendations that we want to present to the executive legislative committee today. Those are in item E1 and highlighted. Sorry, we didn't put page numbers on here, but it is.
Sorry, with item 7. Yeah, what pages are there?
20 on the right.
About 10 pages. That was one down.
Yeah.
It's 20 on, yeah.
Did you find them? Did you guys find them? Apologize. Should have numbered them for you.
Is this the one that starts payment information?
Yes, sir. Great. So I can read those at the manager.
Or do you want to just generally sum up what?
Yeah, so there are 4 items. One was in regards to payment information. So it basically allows senior staff to have the ability to present those that are being awarded funding at payment at different discretion and times and periods. So instead of fully paying up front, if the senior staff decides to pay partially upfront and 50 at the conclusion of the event, or in increments, we can do that as well.
Great,
Just gives some flexibility.
yes, makes sense. Any questions on
The
that?
second item is 2 pages later.
Uh-huh.
And this is basically, we wanted to create, and when we created the form, we wanted to modify the form by adding in the 2 highlighted areas, which is the location of the event. That would be recommending for funding and the number of attendees expected. Those are the 2 additions on that. And then the last item is 3 pages after that is we added a where it's slated 2024-25 unsolicited proposal post-event report. So this is simply once the event is materialized, we'll go back and require certain questions to be answered as it relates to the impact that it has, success, the community engagement, room nights, if it's a room night affiliate event, but basically a form that shows how the event or idea that we funded performed. And that is it.
Hey, Mike, real quick.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Going back to the second point, the location of event, number of attendees. Are you saying that we don't ask that current, we want to add that?
We're adding that. We didn't have that
We didn't have it?
in the first, right?
Okay.
Correct.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Mike, do you, this post-event report, what do you expect this to be used for in the future?
So if we awarded funding to a specific event, And then we have them fill out the post-event form and it didn't perform at a certain level. If they were to come back and request funds again in the future, we would then have a paper trail of reasons and decisions that we made that it didn't perform.
Love it.
Okay,
Sense.
seems like, we agree with all these changes. I'm looking for a motion so we can forward it to the board.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the changes staff recommended for the unsolicited proposal policy outlined in item 1.
Mr. Evelser?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, we are now moving to. Guys, should I click on the agenda? Item E2, our CBA, current board policies. Who's leading
I
us?
believe Mr. Kennedy is.
Okay.
Yep, so I can take the lead on this, and I don't have a formal presentation here prepared, but basically. The committee members will remember, our existing policies are pretty bare bones and outdated, and we've talked for. Some time now about revising those and sort of what that revision should look like, and after some discussion and consideration. We pulled the LVCVA policies and procedures and decided that was a good place to start, and so I've taken the LVCVA policies procedures. Sort of made them consistent with RSCVA and its structure and the way it operates. And I'm just hoping today to sort of have a discussion, get some feedback, revisions, and then we can decide if. We want to take it back and revise it and bring it back to this committee again, or whether. The next stop would be at the board, for board approval. And I don't know, maybe the best way to go through is just kind of do a page turn, and I've sort of highlighted the things that. I have changed from the LVCVA form to conform with the RSCVA, and then we can sort of talk about any other comments. And I can tell you sort of the big changes that I've sort of taken the liberty to change are, things that are dictated by statute. So LVCVA has a different size board, a different makeup board than the RSCVA. That's all statutory. And then a lot of the legal counsel part. So the LVCVA has a general counsel, they're in-house, they have a legal department, so they've got, 4, 5, 6 attorneys that work full-time on LVCVA stuff, which is different, obviously, than the arrangement we have with the RSCVA. We just don't have that scale. Yeah, that amount of legal work, that's something that's necessary. So I've sort of tailored that to the RSCVA's current operations, but other than that, I think we could just maybe sort of go through, and I don't know the best way to do that. I can sort of go down my list, and if I've skipped something you want to talk about, we can stop and do that. Yeah.
Unless y'all have anything you want to bring up now.
Madam Chair, Ben,
Yes.
is this, what you have put together is what we're looking at is the amendments that you've suggested? Is that what we're gonna be looking at, the changes to possible board policies and procedures?
So I will sort of call those out. So some of the things I've said, I will leave this how the LVCVA does it, and we can discuss whether that's best for
So
us.
this is our current board policy procedure. What are we looking at?
So that's the draft of what would be the new policies. and
That's what I want to
procedures.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to go page by page.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So I will,
I'm sorry, just to kind of set the table on. When this, so once we go through it, when it goes to the full board, I mean, would it be helpful, because right now it's not redlined or highlighted or anything, right?
correct.
Okay, so I think when we do go to the full, we would show everything being.
We could, so the issue is, like our existing policies and procedures that are enacted are totally nothing like this. So a red line would just be, everything would be redlined.
But we put the old policy with it.
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
include the old policy,
Yeah.
we can
Right.
include the
And then in
LVCVA
a staff
policy.
summary, maybe your staff report, when we just do general,
Here's the thing.
here's the things that we updated.
Okay, smart.
Okay.
All right, so I will work off of the copy and the materials
Mhm.
for page numbers. and just kind of start going through. So my first comments are on page 4. Section 1.03, second paragraph, so this is where you read it over and over and over, and then you send it out and read it again and find mistakes. That second paragraph, per NRS 244A 6053, it's in July of each even numbered year that we reshuffle board positions.
Sorry. You're saying an edit to this document, which has been
Yes.
edited.
Oh, you left it out, is what you're saying?
Yes, so the
January, that's
OECD does it in
January.
January, we do it in July. Yeah, that's just purely statute.
But we are going through, I mean, each policy is pretty much new. What we're looking at right now is all new. This is LB CBA.
Yes, so if you want to just go 1.01, 1.02 and see if people have comments, we can do that too. I was just skipping to my comments, and if you have some prior to that, we can go back. But
Yeah, I was hoping that maybe we can go through each policy,
Sure.
if that's okay. I mean, it doesn't, we don't have to read them
But,
verbatim, but
yeah, and I'm fine with that. Just a note before I forget, we don't elect a treasurer.
We do.
Who?
By statute, we have to have a secretary. We have to have a.
Who is our treasurer?
That's
all right.
I'm so sorry.
she's taking it
I've never been here for elections, so it shows how naive I am.
So the treasurer and secretary basically satisfy their obligations through staff. But by the statute, we must designate a secretary and a
And
treasurer.
who's the secretary?
Same,
I think it's a little in over.
Okay,
combine them into one
Oh.
position.
cool. Good to know.
Get certified.
Yeah, I haven't certified that election. All right, sorry about that. Go on.
Okay, so maybe then let's back up. Does anybody have any comments to the purposes or the preamble? Nope. Policy 1.01. That's just purely statute. 1.02. Again, that's a reflection of statute.
Yeah.
1.03, I've already called out the change from January to July. The difference from our existing policy is our existing policy says you have to have a majority of board members call for a special meeting. And in the LVCVA document, they have 3 board members. From a legal perspective, I like 3 board members. I always thought it was a little bit weird with open meeting law that you would have a majority of the board sort of demand action outside of a meeting.
But the chair would call it in most circumstances.
In most-
as you
so-
outlined here.
Yes, so
Okay.
the 3 board members would be an issue if there were 3 board members that wanted a special meeting that the chair, for whatever reason,
Said
did
no.
not call.
Got it.
The 3 board members can mandate it
Versus a majority.
versus a majority.
Yeah, I like that. Does this, it says in the event, the request of the CEO, so can Mike call a board meeting? Is that how you read it?
I
Yeah.
think Mike could call it
Yes.
with the vacancy of the chair.
For the vacancy of chair, okay?
I mean, the one thing just to point out is, and I don't disagree, I'm good with 3 board members, but part, or the LVCB is a much larger board, right? So it is
It
a
is.
smaller fraction of the. It doesn't matter, I
Ratio,
mean, I'm
like,
still
yeah.
good, yeah, ratio, but I'm still good with 3, but isn't there, what is their board at, like 15?
I think it's 13. It might be 15.
Is there a
Anyway, I'm
process?
good with I'm good with the 3.
Later on, it talks about it. It's on written request of 3 board members. The special meeting could be called.
Thank you.
But again, I don't know in the event of a vacancy of the chair, so. At the
Yeah.
request of the CEO or 3 board, should we write it a little differently?
Yeah.
Because it's confusing for me, because if Eddie wants to call a board meeting and I'm saying no, then he has to wait for me to leave the country to get the 3 board members together.
Yeah, and it's clarified later in the document, but we'll make that change
Okay.
at that beginning. At one point, we'll make it clear.
That it is the chair or.
Or 3,
vacant,
or CEO.
Or
Yeah, we'll probably just move the 3 members to the front of the sentence and then put the vacancy. So it's clarified that the CEO is only at the vacancy of the
I
chair.
can also say
But you could do
also,
3 members and.
doesn't also accomplish that.
I want the.
Yeah,
We'll
legal.
get it figured out, just so that it's consistent and clear.
Yeah.
And then on this consecutive terms, the next page on 5, is that current rules? We just made that up? Do we care?
That is OVCBA.
Yeah, but my question is, so. I think it's crazy that it's just electeds that can be chair. I think that's wrong. We should go back and change that, but whatever. So say. You really like who's in there. And the board wants to keep them on. I don't know what the thought is here, but I hate to like. You know. If that person is a 12-year commissioner or council member and they're just awesome. I don't know, so that's just a thought.
So to be clear, it's just talking about the chair, right? So a county commissioner, if they serve 12 years on the county commission, they can
can't
be on the board.
I know,
Yes,
but if you like them as chair.
Yep.
I don't know why we don't limit it at my board, is what I'm saying. If you really like your chair, you can just keep them as chair for however long you want to. But I don't care, I don't have a dog in the fight, I just thought that just seems like we're restraining ourselves unnecessarily, but y'all have a different perspective, I'm sure.
I mean, I'd kind of like to hear the whole board discussion on it, I get where you're going, I also get where. The fact that it's only rotated amongst 3 entities, basically. Is, would the other 2 feel disenfranchised that, hey, we never get our
Right.
shot?
Or we could say what we did at Commonwealth, we just made this change. It's a rotating,
Right,
because we had a chair that there was a perception that that person wouldn't let anyone else be chair. And so now it's like Sparks, Reno, Washoe, Sparks, Reno, and so
Right.
that's every year. So we could also do that if we thought that was appropriate. So yeah, maybe we just have you're right, just leave it up, have a board discussion.
I mean, I do think the one thing about 2 terms is. It is an increased commitment of time and energy, right, for that person. That. After you give 4 years, it's kind of like, do you tap out and go, okay, somebody else take
Yeah.
that kind of level of. Responsibility, but I think to your point, it's full room to beat it up.
Yeah,
so we'll leave it in for now and sort of flag it when we present it to the board.
and yeah, maybe in your staff report, you say, right now, it's not limited, this was what we took as a best practice, or what we thought it could be.
Chair, I would agree if we. Because I did bring this up earlier in the year and just sort of backed away from it, that perhaps. We don't limit the chair to
I know,
just the
that's crazy.
electeds. And. Obviously, we need statute to change that, and if we do pursue that in the upcoming session. Maybe we can. Put guardrails around how that process works for the entirety of. So I agree with you, but I think for right now, for policy change. Until a change happens. And other members could possibly be chair. Or how the voting happens. I think it'd be. I would prefer the rotating versus the unlimited, just because I think. Get dicey. But I think right now, maybe this is,
Yeah. Compromise.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Then if you don't mind bringing up the fact that maybe that's something that we as the board might want to. Instruct our government relations team to pursue in the statutory change.
Sure.
That's something that we all support.
Yes, so we will at some point before session have a meeting with our lobbyists at this committee level, to talk about a platform and an approach, and then that'll go to the board. That'll all happen before session.
Thank you.
All right, continue on.
All right, any other questions, comments on 1.03?
No,
We'll move on to 1.04. sort of the mission oversight powers and duties, these are just taken from the LVCVA, but I think they match pretty well with what the RCVA, what this board's role currently is. Again, there's a typo there in section 2, we reference LVCVA, change that. But other than that, I didn't have any other.
I would argue just add one word on item 3. Under D3. Solicit, enhance, and promote tourism. It says solicit and promote. You know, like enhance the
yep.
destination, we do that sort of branding too.
And also I will, so Charlene, who's not here today, sent me her, she only had a couple comments, I almost forgot about that. I'll bring those up as we go along. Just so we can address them, and one of her comments was on that, 1.04 E3 that you just talked about. Where she questions the language about, annual grants in cash or in kind to chambers of commerce. Or nonprofits. The reference to chambers of commerce is from the statute, so there's a statute that auzes that, and this is just reflecting it. So I just want to make that clear, so she can think
And now
about it.
you got excited.
Do we provide? Is it a chamber of commerce?
We do now.
I mean, have we? That's from statute, you're saying?
It is, not that I'm aware of, so, you know, we have in the past, given the chamber, reduced rate rentals. But I don't believe we've ever
Since I've been here.
given a grant. I mean, we participate in the chamber. So yeah, there's a statute that says we can, to the extent it promotes, enhances tourism.
From solicit, yeah.
Yeah.
To solicit, enhance and promote tourism, so. Interesting, and. So Chamber of Commerce. And other nonprofit groups or associations, so that's what we've been focusing on, they come in. Wonder what the intent was for focusing on the chamber.
It's like the chamber, RSCBA, Eat On, like we all have to,
Collaborative.
and airport, I think they're just like, we have to work together. What do you think, Mike?
Agreed, yeah. Like I said, Ben, I'm not familiar with any other grants since I've been here. We were a member of the chamber.
I mean, it's one of those things that have been in place so long.
Yeah, old school.
That it's almost like, I mean, this originally started as the Fair and Recreation
Right.
Board.
Right.
Right, there's certain things language wise where it's like,
It's archaic language, it's still in statute, but we're
Right.
not using it in.
Right.
Chamber doesn't operate that type of way.
it's a different.
That's what I was thinking, did the chamber in the past operate some sort of fund that RSCBA would give as a promotion of tourism? That the chamber would then dole out and use, or what have you, so that's what I was thinking, and we don't do that necessarily.
And in my discussions with Ms. Silver, the chamber have been, if there are things the chamber wants to pursue that come under that statute, it should be a board level discussion because of the chamber's position on the board.
Right.
And the relationship with the
Mhm.
CEO, that if there are any chamber grants or asked by the chamber, that it's a board decision, notwithstanding the statute.
Yeah. Okay,
1.04, anything else? Any other comments?
has staff fully reviewed all these? Because a lot of this is the function of you all, and I'm interested, Mike, specifically, these new broader descriptions, you know, what they mean to you as
Yeah,
CEO.
so when Ben took our original policies and then adopted a lot of the changes to those CBA, he sent all those to us. So with the entire senior staff had a copy of those to review. There's so much language here, it's hard to follow every single one and stay on top of it. So we looked at more, any significant changes that really would impact the staff or the organization. We didn't focus much on like 1.04, right, there is 12 items, let me get into the specifics.
Yes, but like
Yeah.
3, right? So did we already give you the authority to change agreements under the $100,000?
So CO has authority up to 100,000, that was changed
And
probably
that's
2
when-
years ago, Ben, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
And so the difference there, that was my next point, is the reporting requirement.
Okay.
For everything between 50 and 100, and that was just adopted from OBCVA as a best practice.
So, yeah, it's like the county commission receives expenditure report from the comptroller quarterly. And its expenditures, so we can just kind of make sure that we understand what
Checks and balances.
contracts people are entering into. So that's what 4 is it would be a new practice for us to add quarterly. Okay.
Yes.
Do
So he's
we-
authorized and then comes back to the board and says, here's the contracts I entered under that
Okay.
authorization.
Do we have a ton of those? Does that make sense for us to do?
I don't know the number of amount we would have between the 50 and 100,000, we'd have to go back and look. I don't know, off the top of my head,
Just don't wanna give you more work,
Yeah.
but if it makes sense.
but I think it's good to have that checks and balance, right?
Transparency.
So the board knows exactly what we're approving.
On item 5, each committee shall have a separate charter approved by the board. Do we have a charter for this committee?
So no, so we have meeting minutes. So our process right now is when the board wants a committee, we put it on an agenda and by action, the board creates that committee, describes its purpose and what its hopes are for that committee. And then the chair appoints the members of that committee.
Okay.
But we don't have, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, other than the minutes where we describe creating the committees, we don't have a charter document. And I think that's a great idea that we should create those so that we can have a packet that goes to the board, so everybody knows exactly what the executive and legislative committee does, the finance committee, facilities, et cetera.
So we don't have a charter, but this is a good change.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And one of the things with committees that I was hoping maybe we could add in there and contemplate with the full board, that our committees do a bulk of the work. So our executive function is a report from the committees. We trust the folks, hear them out, and rather than creating our executive meetings to become somewhat lengthy at times. And so I don't know how we do this, Chair, but maybe some of the presentations that we have at executive meeting are at full RSCBA, maybe some of those go to our committees, right? That perhaps the full exec doesn't have to have those. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And not trying to minimize, but the decision, my hope is how can we put more decision-making into small committees where we can get into the nuts and bolts of it, like what we're doing today, frankly, and then give our recommendation to the full board. So we're not doing all of this in front of the. full
What, you're
board.
trying to save time at the board meeting? What? Madman,
Sorry.
what do you think?
No, I know. And we don't have that many committees.
Right.
It's funny because sitting on the finance committee, I feel like we've done some of that. And I think the board's been fairly, other than really major issues, I mean, something like the track. That's further, we do need to, right, we vet it, but I get the whole board wanting to really kind of shoot up, but there's other things where, budget augmentations, right?
Yeah.
If that comes through the finance committee, and I think for the most part, the board has been pretty good about if you guys have vetted it,
Yeah,
there might be a question or two, but I'm with you, I think where we can.
Especially if it's unanimous at a committee level, right? And then the recommendation to the full board.
Mhm.
And if there is contention at a committee level, then that's when the board gets involved and we have a broader conversation.
Yeah.
I guess I'm looking for more guiding language for a structure like that for the committees.
So I think it's a great point, and I'll take whatever guidance you want to give me. So this is, we've ebbed and flowed over the years in this organization. So, 10 years ago, we
They've done
had
that.
monthly finance committee meetings, monthly marketing committee meetings that were they were set the week before the board meeting. We had them every week. And there was an effort to sort of defer some of the deeper discussions to the committee level. And then it's just up to the discretion of the board. And then there was sort of a change in board membership where the board said, well, we think these are important things and we'd like to deal with them at the full board level and take some of that sort of legwork and discretion away from the committees. And so it's ebbed and flowed, and it's really up to the discretion of the board at any given time. But if we can, put some policy language in that it would be preferred or, recommended that matters appropriate for committee determination, go to committees first and then come to the board for full discussion. It's just really, that dividing line, right? So if our agenda for Thursday, we've got some presentations, just making clear for Mike and staff and for me, what sort of things should go to the committee first and what sort of things should come directly to the board. And it's always been a moving target. But if we can define that to put more things on the committees, obviously we can do that.
And maybe the changes in the past are because we haven't had really strong procedures and board policies. We put it in here as a strengthening, intent. Then maybe in the future, like the design is that these committees do the work. And we do have shorter, more succinct and effective executive meeting.
Yeah, I mean, anything that goes to a committee should be on consent, in my opinion.
Yeah. I agree with
But again, not this item, because it's board policies and we really want to have the board weigh on it,
But
at
we're
least
supposed
on a few, maybe as a committee, we should decide, okay, here are the things we just need some strong direction. If you have any other notes, please let us know, but like, we need to talk about these 3 items, whatever they are. In this document. But we don't have a marketing committee, do we?
Not anymore.
No, there was a reshuffle
Christina
and
wants-
consolidation of committees. Because the discussion at the time was, we're a marketing organization and marketing is so
Right.
important.
Yeah.
It should be the whole board that deals with marketing.
Fair.
But
But I can also trust that Stephen and his marketing skills articulates the design and then it goes to consent. I'm like, I vote aye, right? Like, that's
Yeah, I'm with
cool.
Eddie on that. Oh, no. But I think the tough part too is. And I can see both ways, but
Yeah.
if we either go all, right, we all sign off on it. The other danger is we create all these committees.
Yeah.
I worry that we tie staff. I already worry
That's what
about
happened.
what it takes to
Yeah.
get ready for the
It's
monthlies.
too much work.
And especially
And
meeting
board
with board members and. Does the committee make that, multiply that out that much more, but. Unless we truly are disciplined as a board to go, oh yeah, marketing committee came back and. Like you said, it goes to consent outside of like an issue that really, hey, I go back to the track, that was a big expenditure.
Out of budget.
We as a group need to all get our,
But wouldn't Stephen, sorry for interjecting, Chair, I don't know
No,
about
just-
procedure.
we're just-
Wouldn't wouldn't we want to follow basic procedures where if it's all is on consent, we get our agenda and it's like, can we pull this, Chair, can we pull this ahead of time? And then everyone is made known of that. It happens, your jurisdiction happens in all jurisdictions. I think it's a right of board members to do that. Hopefully, we don't abuse it in any way to circumvent what we're trying to accomplish here. For the smaller committees, my assumption is that they delegate their responsibilities, so it's not, it's team members, what they're focusing on, they're involved in, and then they have the ownership of board members in some of those decision-making processes. But I also don't see that these committees would have to meet monthly either, right? Like, it would be based on perhaps need, like we're going through this, it took us a while to get here. It's been a while since we've had, I guess we did it last month, but. What do you think?
I'm torn. I have, I am chair of the Tahoe Transportation District. We have a million committees and I created those specifically because I was like, this board is unruly and we're not getting anything done. And our meetings were going like 5+ hours on like things that felt like, why are we doing this? It has not improved our board meetings, but that is like, you have to have a disciplined board, I think that that's the point. And then I feel like kind of bad for the staff because now I've thrusted all these meetings. The meetings the way we've done it at TTD is they're before the board meeting. So all those meetings, finance, we have like a transportation advisory committee and then some other ones, they meet beforehand, the board meets at 3. We try to get out by 5, but rarely do, but, so anyway, I've seen it always, but I don't know, a marketing committee, I can see why are we on this board, I guess, if we're having a committee or a full board, but I don't know.
But like, this is an important committee that we're on. Finance is an important
Yeah.
committee.
Right.
I don't know what else is a good committee, but knowing that if we reduce, maybe there's a subcommittee that works on some of the proposals, right, and makes recommendations. Again, whatever we can do to, and then the chairs of those committees, they're the ones responsible for submitting the report to the full board and owning it, not putting it back on staff. And obviously, the full board's gonna have to weigh in on this.
Yeah,
We might all be outnumbered.
a bigger discussion to have, so we can highlight this as another thing for the board to contemplate.
If I could add, maybe we can tee it up this way, is we'll assume we're gonna create charters for these committees, so I'll work with Mira, we'll go back through the minutes, I'll put together sort of proposed charter for each committee, and I think that's something that, whether that comes back here, goes to the board, we can better define what each committee does, and that may help us guide the discussion on what things are appropriate to go to the committee first. Okay,
Ben, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, could Dana and I were just having a sidebar, just to go back to number 3. So a lot of the contracts that would fall between that 50 to 100 range are media buys. And those are defined as professional services. Would they require to come back to the board under this language?
so I think it would, so that the sort of the professional services, that distinction is whether or not we have to bid them out. So because it's professional service, we wouldn't have to, you'd be free to sign up any
Okay,
media buy under 100,000. What this is saying is that any media buy between 50 and 100 would come back to the board to say, here, we spent X on this.
okay.
So the professional service is sort of irrelevant on those contracts.
What about the Air Service Development Fund, which the board, we did it, if you remember, we took the limit up to 500,000 due to the urgency of being able to, if American Airlines called us tomorrow and said, we really need 100,000 to keep Austin going and not having to wait 3 weeks for a board meeting.
That's a good point.
Right, that is a good point. So we should
Those in there.
call out,
Yeah.
except for the Air Service Authority.
Okay,
But I think the discussion with Air Service though, wasn't it that if you spent that money, you would then, present it to the board and.
Let us
we would
know.
follow
we
this policy.
would. Yeah, if it was just a reporting structure, since we made this decision, yeah, we'd obviously come back to the board and report it. I just want to make sure this didn't restrict us from moving forward with that approval. Because of the language,
Yeah, I think this 3 is purely report.
FYI.
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay,
here's what we have done with the authority
Okay.
that I have been granted.
okay. Just want to make sure. Thank you.
And just when we get to number 6, paragraph 6.
Okay, let's stay on number 5. There's a couple additional things I want to call out and that Charlene listed out here. There is a requirement that all board members must participate in at least one committee. Charlene had just flagged that for discussion.
We don't have enough committees.
We can add more.
Yeah,
board members, so.
I think everybody is on that. Well, the issue is quorum.
Or,
So because we only have 9 board members, if you have 5 committee members, you've got a quorum of the board.
Yeah, you don't want 4.
Right, and if you have 3,
Okay.
then any 2 committee members talking to each other is a quorum. Because 2 would be a quorum if you only have 3 members. So 4 is kind of the magic number for our committees, given our number of board members.
We usually want 4.
4 is the number. So it's less than a quorum of the
Oh, we
full
have
board, but it takes 3 to
That's
secure
what you're saying.
quorum.
I think we take out that sentence.
Okay,
I don't think we should require that.
I think they generally do anyway.
Right.
But I agree, if,
Well, I don't think, is the mayor on a committee? I don't think everyone is on a committee.
yeah, I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that there is.
No.
Mira, you would know.
No.
Mira knows.
So,
Greg, I think, Greg is on the special events and that's.
yeah,
Mayor. Just Mayor.
Okay,
Is John?
yeah, John's not.
You're
on
right,
it.
John is not.
does any, John?
Well,
I think
he's
you might-
good.
You're right,
Sometimes.
there's that side, I agree, I think not counting that.
Yeah,
Yep,
And it would kind of take care of itself too, if a member said, hey, I'm not on it, I want to be on.
mhm.
okay. And then again, in that section 5, so the process here talks about. You have a committee, the chair appoints the members of the committee, and then those appointments are ratified by the board.
Yeah, that's fine.
We don't do that currently. The chair can appoint committees offline. We don't have to take any public action to change or staff a board. So I'm just throwing that out for
I
discussion.
think
if
it
that's how
should be on the agenda.
It should come back
Yeah.
for committee makeup. Okay.
I mean, that's, I think, where there's things in the past that have gotten dicey, like, let's let the board, there's no print on
Yeah.
it, just move on.
Okay. Let's read that. I think you had a comment on 6.
I did, so 6 is performance and compensation reviews, and it says annually the board shall review performance and compensation of the CEO. That occurs obviously, and the compensation ranges for other executive level employees. That has never been within the purview of the board. We're pretty distinct that the only employee that reports to the board
Yeah, let's
is the
take that.
CEO. Okay,
I don't
I
think
think-
that's appropriate.
I'm guessing if that was pulled from the LBCBA, my guess is because they have C-level employees. And I've been just watching their meetings before,
general
they
counsel and others.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do.
Which
Yeah.
we just don't have, so. And then it also says the board shall consider recommendations of the finance committee, which makes sense, but historically here, this committee deals with both the review as well as the compensation aspects of the CEO. So I think we would want to change that to this committee.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good point.
Okay, I'm gonna move on. If anybody has any comments on 7 and 8. Section 9, this was noted by Chair Bybee as well. Approval of CEO expense reports, and Mike, what is the process currently? Is it the chair that?
Chair,
approves?
yeah,
So, with the LBCBA, it's the treasurer and another board member, not the chair, that approves the CEO expense reports. I don't know the reason for that.
It might just be the way they were set up. To
Just
me,
the
and
structure.
again, just as chair of the finance. To me, it's indifferent, look, if it's, as long as it's being done.
Mhm.
And again, and it's nothing reflective of an individual, it's just knowing that you have the checks and
Checks and
balances.
balances, yeah.
But I mean, if it stayed with the chair, I don't. That's a problem.
I think the chair is probably most engaged on the day-to-day.
Yeah.
And able to view them and consider
We'll
them
just change this
appropriately.
to the chair.
Okay, any other comments on that 1.04?
We just don't do 10 right now, correct?
I was gonna say, what is 10? What is?
So I think you've got to look at these in the context of, I believe these were adopted after the LBCBA had its issues with light vouchers and everything else. I think this is an effort to just provide oversight on sort of gifts and staff perks.
But aren't we doing that with the budget? Like, we give you a certain amount of dollars to do these things.
Mhm.
So they're not coming to us today, right? None of these things are coming to us today.
No, there is I believe in HR is not here, but he's not here, but within the employee handbook, I believe there is specific language, I won't even know, that calls about gift limits.
Yeah, so as part of the, I believe it's in the ethics
Yeah.
policy that there are, but I think this is actually talking about employee engagement or interaction. So like you're rewarding an employee for, like, I know you're gonna have employee of the year, for example. So I think that is what this is talking about, is those types of gifts that are being given to, and that is a budgeted item within HR's budget that
Yes.
has already been approved, and it has been discussed at board
Right.
meetings related to that already.
So I think the question is for this group and the board in general. Whether we wanna start that. Or if we keep it within the budget authority and. Something to. Otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. Is it, we're comfortable with the way it is, you know, Mike has his signature authority. And he has the discretion to make these awards, and we're not worried about itemizing them, or do we want to write a report?
Don't mean to keep kicking the can to the bigger group, but
Another board discussion.
if the group has heartburn on it, I mean, I personally am good, but.
Yeah, I'm personally supportive of removing that. I feel like we're not big enough like LB or LCA, or that it doesn't require that much oversight.
Yeah.
I feel like those things would be parent budget. If there is an abuse, then we would know that, and I don't want to burden him in doing good things for staff promotion and support, so.
I mean, I do, and I think obviously always CBA is a template.
Yeah,
And they want what I want to slide someone, but it is on such a different scale on so many fronts that,
Yeah.
um. I mean, I'd be good with removing it, but if we want to have the discussion with the full group.
So maybe the way to tee it up and the sort of the work product that we eventually present to the full group is a red line. Comparing what you have in front of you today and what you recommended changing. So we can pull this out, the group will see that we've pulled it out, and if anybody wants to. have a
Right, I
discussion
like
about
that.
Here's what we needed. Okay. 1.05 board travel policy. I did not have any.
Second paragraph is confusing. So. One event outside the county during their first term of office. I know that you have opportunities for board members. Do we need to list that out? I'm not sure. What the thought is from the board on that.
When have you trouble?
No, but I'm on 15 boards,
I know, it's
so I
hard.
can't.
So are you saying we don't want to force someone?
Yes, I
I
might,
see
that's
what
my
you're saying.
concern is.
It's pretty restrictive.
I
Yeah,
see
you
what
got
you're
board
saying.
members who can't necessarily do that.
And I agree with you, Chair.
Maybe, Madam Chair, something taking out the language that says it has to be outside of county.
Yeah,
You do
'cause we have, I
participate.
do as many things as I can locally, but I can't. be final.
Maybe that's the,
Or we could just get rid of that paragraph
Yeah.
altogether.
Well, the one thing that I like about this is the board chair in consultation with the CEO may request additional attendance by board members at events outside of Washoe County where there is meaningful business purposes. Or relationship value. So do we already have a policy on board travel? That's just, maybe that's a bigger question. Do we know, what do we do?
we allocate funds within the
Yeah.
budget for board travel. But there is no policy saying you have to go twice a year or once a year or local or non-local.
And what will reimburse and what? Any of that?
Reimbursement is basically airfare, hotel,
Okay.
tickets,
Whatever the travel is.
Standard.
staff.
First step.
travel.
And I think that travel policy in general was approved by the.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so then I guess we can't take up.
The whole
second.
Sorry, the second paragraph.
Sorry,
Go for it.
so, so much here, I'm trying to find the right was. So the last sentence, a board member who travels shall also report on the member's participation. So I sort of like that. I mean, I traveled to Kansas City.
And then you were
and
able to tell us about it.
I'm working, but I did it in member comment, right? Like, I feel like let's create a policy that someone that goes somewhere, I wanna hear back from them. I wanna hear what they have to say.
Mhm.
It shouldn't be just me excited to tell you all about it. Like, I think our board members should address the board about those events and experiences, because while there'll be good things and maybe there'll be, pivot things that we need to work on, like, I think that's a valuable sentence.
Maybe we put that sentence after the third paragraph, after reasonable travel conditions, period.
Yep.
A board member who travels shall
Yep.
also, okay.
I'm going to,
But you're striking the last sentence of the first paragraph, right? Board members are encouraged to attend at least one outside. Or maybe board members are encouraged to attend our CBA events inside and outside Washington.
Yeah, that's fine too. We can do
Let's
that,
do that, because I think we do want to encourage
Yeah.
board members,
to do stuff.
strike to save that last sentence and then change the last sentence in the first paragraph.
Yep. Gotcha. Okay. Okay, any other comments to 1.05? I'll move on to 1.06.
So this isn't another part of policy, but I think we should still add in. The chair is responsible on agenda management with the CEO. It's I know that you have agenda management somewhere else in here. On page 10, but I think we should still put it on the chair. And parliamentary rules, what are the rules that we're following right now? Is it Robert's rule?
It is, that's in here somewhere too. in a
Okay.
different spot. But yes, Robert's rules with the exception that the chair can make motions.
And parliamentary rules just kind of is like whatever. So just managing the meeting,
Yes.
essentially.
Yes.
Okay.
So this has been a question that we've gone back and forth on, and there's been discussion. So it's number 5. So, the chair advising the CEO on agenda preparation for meetings. And I know it's somewhere else in here too, where it talks about the CEO and chair working on the agenda. I mean, do we want to define sort of who sets and has the final authority for agenda items? So it's
That is
always
the
just-
chair. That should be the chair,
So the chair works with the CEO, but ultimately the chair,
makes the decision on the agenda. I think that's
So
what the chair does.
LBCBA is the opposite.
Oh, the CEO makes the decision.
And the reason, when I talked to them about that, where the question came up was, how do you control when organizations are lobbying board members for financial support? And we took a step in the right direction with the new policy. But the response I got back from the LBCBA was, it doesn't make the agenda because Steve Hill sets the agenda. And if someone wants to come and lobby, they lobby in public comment. And it was black and white. I'm not saying it's right, I'm saying that's what they did.
Yeah. The way we have it outlined in our board rules is. It's not advise the CEO, it's something like. Works with legal, the CEO to determine the agenda, what is on the agenda. That's what it says essentially, and then it's like, it has to be legal and it has to be within the what the manager thinks that the CEO thinks that they can carry out. You can't just put something on the agenda that the manager's like, I can't do that, So I don't know.
So Ben, do we currently spell it out?
so we currently say that the CEO works in connection with the chair to, I don't know which way it is. Yeah, they work in conjunction to set the agenda. It doesn't say if there's a disagreement, who decides. We've just always sort of said defer to the chair. And the sort of chair ultimately sets the agenda. And I think this is an opportunity to better define that so that when I get the question sometime in the future, I can point to a policy and say, here's why I'm saying this.
What do you think?
I sound like a broken record. I think it's a big enough
It
issue
should.
where we're gonna all wanna weigh in
Yeah.
and chew it up. I get where the LVCVA is at too, I think the LVCVA is, and this is no reflection of, right, but it's. it seems to be more, I shouldn't say that, because I don't really follow the meeting that close, but it seems more CEO driven from Raleigh's tenure of what, 20+ years probably, and before that it was Manny for another, I mean, you almost see that more, it's being driven. But, I like the idea that, you know, you always have public comment as an outlet, if it were something like that. But I think it's gonna be to me, again, it's a big enough, topic that I think every board member is gonna wanna kind of weigh in versus us saying, we're gonna now just change it to
Right.
go CEO.
It's a policy question.
It's pretty
Right.
big,
Yeah.
it's a pretty big departure.
Yeah,
I mean, what, they don't wanna open up a can of
Yeah.
worms from past, but what has happened when? It's like, no, I'm not putting it on the,
It's,
I mean, does the board have kind of final say, or I mean, the chair have final say, like, no, we're not going with it?
it's incredibly rare, so I don't wanna give the impression that every month we're
Right.
duking it out between the CEO and chair what goes on the agenda. It's almost always. agreed.
or another board member in the chair.
Right, that's where you have a board member that wants something on an agenda, and for whatever reason, whether it's just managing the meeting times, they wanna push it further, and the board member still wants it. Do they appeal to the chair or the CEO and just addressing that
Right.
possibility, but it's incredibly rare, like there's. 99% of the time, there's total agreement and there's no issues.
I mean, in hearing that though. To your point, Alexis, I do wonder too, does it put you, Mike, in a bad spot? When a chair, I'm sorry, when a board member.
Right. It's almost
When the
better.
chair
to
deals,
be on
when
the
the chair deals with it, it's kind of.
Yeah.
Well, I think, yes, I agree, right? It definitely puts more stress on the CEO when a board member is requesting something to be on the agenda. But I also think that if your CEO has a good relationship with the board and a good relationship with the chair, they're gonna come to an agreement on what should be on the agenda or not. I mean, you would hope, right? I mean, but then also, has there ever been scenarios where a chair has put something on the agenda, which clearly the majority of the board probably thinks, why are we discussing this today?
Yeah,
And here we are.
but isn't it better to be like?
This is my job.
It's like, the chair conducts the orchestra of the board, you
Right.
conduct the orchestra of the day-to-day of the organization.
Right.
That's how I see the roles being
Right.
different, but in consultation, the chair can't do anything without. The CEO though, you know.
I think the way it's written now is the chair has ultimate say on. Cause there was something that, I don't remember what it was, Ben, there was something that was questionable, and I remember I asked the question. Do I have any, when I was interim, if I had any say, and the ultimate response was no. I can't remember what the item was.
So, you can have something in consultation, but then the question is, if there's no agreement, who decides?
But that's why ours say it
Right.
has to, if you can't do it.
Yeah.
Functionally, if it will destroy the organization, you can put your foot down.
Right,
And then if it's not legal, you can put your foot down.
And I think
So
that's- yeah.
that's where the constraints have been at the county commission at least.
and I think that's what's missing right now, is that if the chair has ultimate say over the agenda, so be it, but if there's something that is outrageous, there's gotta be some kind of stop mechanism, right? Not saying it's gonna happen, but right now I don't
I
think
can
there
send you
is.
the language we adopted, if that
I
helps.
can look,
Okay.
okay, so I think
Because it
this,
does help us, it helps me at least.
so I think this is a broader discussion,
Yes.
and I'll take a stab at something. Okay, and then let's talk about number 8.
Okay.
So this is not in the LBCBA document, this is reflective of our practice.
Mhm.
That a chair, if we call a meeting to order and we start, and then the chair decides they want to take something off the agenda and deal with it later, or wants to reorder things, the chair has that power, and that's what we've always followed, that's been our practice, but I don't know that that is written down anywhere saying, here is the rule.
So we don't have to do a motion saying we motion to table. the chair can decide that unilaterally.
So once discussion is started, I think you've got to table it, but
Yeah.
I think a chair can say, I'm gonna pull this
Oh,
from the
yeah.
agenda today. We're not gonna hear this.
Most of the time, that's because of staff being like, we're not ready.
Right.
You know, the chair would move that.
Just get in the weeds. If that's in place, then 5 is obsolete basically because,
Kind of, right?
right?
Right.
You said
Well,
the
you
agenda
think
any way you
so.
want, I'm gonna take it off.
You couldn't add anything.
I mean, I know, was that,
You just couldn't add anything.
That's the, yeah.
but you could block something continually.
Yes.
And again, I'm not trying to go to the dark side, but I'm,
It's a great area for the organization. I'm sort of taking this as some opportunities to flesh those out so we can have.
Well, my question is, you go back to page 4, we're talking about election of the chair. Do we want to put that, any board member can call for an election of the chair if the chair is out of control?
So that's a statute that says we reelect our executive officers every 2 years. The statute does not talk about if there's a loss of confidence in a chair or removing a chair, or we're sort of. At that point, we just have to do what is reasonable, but the statute doesn't talk about removing a chair, so I've always been sort of hesitant to adopt a policy
Okay.
that says, here's how to do it, because it is a gray area.
Well, we don't have a policy on it at the county either, so.
I think if I had 8 board members clamoring on, calling me on the phone saying, we've got to get rid of this chair, how do we do it? We'd have to just put something up and discuss that in an open meeting.
Okay.
So number 8. Do we leave that the chair can rearrange and remove items? Do you want to require board action after a meeting starts? For the chair to remove something?
But it doesn't, so approval of the agenda, so we do that.
So you do that.
So the board could, if the chair says I'm removing item 8, I need approval of the agenda, people could say, no, we're keeping 8, and they can approve the agenda as it is, so I think there are checks and balances.
Okay, so I think I want to call those out a little bit clearer, so I'll do that.
We're really worried about like a
right,
dictatorial chair.
Okay. Trying to keep things moving here, 107, 108, I didn't have any comments.
Ben, on 107, the one thing I'm just playing with in my head is. For example, last term, I believe Ann was vice chair. Technically, she is not an elected, right? How is that affected by having that you have to have an elected in the chair?
Good question.
Spot?
So it's okay, because the statute just says the chair must be an elected. The vice chair doesn't become the chair, the vice chair is just chairing a meeting in the
Okay.
chair's absence, and the statute requires a chair and a vice chair. And so it could have required that the vice chair be elected too, but it doesn't care.
Does the vice chair take all the authorities of the chair when acting
For
as the
that
chair?
meeting?
I think when chairing a meeting, right, does the vice chair automatically ascend to like the chair's ability to approve expense reports?
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean, we cross that bridge when we come to
Really,
it,
it
I
would
would
be-
say,
obviously it would
unless it's
be-
like a long-term thing.
Right, like a
But
legal.
if it's a long-term
process,
thing, then you're
yeah.
replacing the chair.
Temporarily disabled.
Right.
Okay,
I did not have a lot of other. Here, Molly, if you have anything, jump in.
I just think it's super sorry, Molly,
No, it's
I'll cut you off and then you can go, on page 9, 1. Types of meetings, I don't know if we should be calling out this 9 AM, I'm just. You don't wanna have to change your bylaws every.
right.
So. This one, oh, sorry, go ahead, Molly.
And we give our chair the ability to change it. Exact time it needs to be set by the chair after consultation with the board.
Yeah.
And this is just comes right out of our existing, but yeah, we can revise that, we can just say the time
Yeah, to be,
to be set.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have any comments until
Okay.
page 13, which is really. functions and powers of the CEO.
Yeah, I don't sure that.
Consistent always.
What's your comment?
So I just want to, you know, right now, this language is taken out of the CEO contract. As you know, every time that we recruit for a CEO, with the help of the recruiting company, we revise position description, which revises some of the duties. So I would just put some catch-all language in there that, or other duties as assigned, so that, we are always consistent with what the contract says and that the contract would control.
Well, right there.
Yeah, but we want to also put in that the contract would control.
Oh, okay.
To the extent that there were any inconsistencies. The other one, on that same point, I did have a question, just something to think about. On item 2.01, paragraph 6,
What page is that?
page 13, sorry. In paragraph 6, it says, establish the limits of subordinates regarding contractual commitments, expenditures, internal operation, and personnel policies not specified by the board. There's always been an open question as to, we have a set of personnel policies that are, it's quite large, actually, that have been approved by the board. I think at the time, there wasn't a very active board looking at what those policies are. I think there's a much more active board in those. Some of them detail things such as simple as where staff will park, versus there are very significant ones like harassment, discrimination, where the agency could be held liable or have other legal obligations related to that. I was curious to hear what the committee's thoughts were on what personnel policies absolutely need to come to the board. If all of them, we can put that, we might want to revise this language a little bit, or if there's more. Because every other employee other than the CEO reports to the CEO, not to the board. So if we want to make some distinction there at all, I just open it up for discussion or thoughts.
I think that's the role of the CEO, to adopt those policies, to make sure that they're in accordance with the law.
So I definitely think that certain policies such as harassment, discrimination, anytime that there is a potential.
But we already
legal
adopted
liability,
those.
we did,
Yeah.
absolutely. You've actually adopted the whole set. My point was to make sure that there's active review and discussion by the board, sometimes limiting which policies need to absolutely be approved by the board may be helpful to the extent that then you will actually get the board looked at it, agreed to it, understood what they approved. Does that make sense? But sometimes, and might weigh in at all, that to the point of moving, there are definitely times when certain just general policies need to be made that do not affect really any legal liability or exposure for the agency that should be within the purview of the CEO.
Yeah, like, I don't know, cell phone policy, like, I hope that
Exactly.
you got that covered, you know?
right.
Social media policy, I don't know, maybe that should go to the board. What do you think?
Yeah, it's hard because we're such a large, it is a large organization with a lot of,
Right.
and not saying we want to be, I don't know if it's like a every so often regular review of a certain area. Just, I mean, honestly, this is the exercise we're doing right now, is kind of one of these words like,
Right.
when's the last time the board has taken a look at this?
Right.
And you're right, you start going down the rabbit hole on, I mean, everything from different safety policies to,
Well, we're going through that right now.
right, yeah, I don't know. It's to me, with, on one end, without just getting so in the weeds of every, but I think part of it is knowing that, hey, it is being addressed, right? Like,
Yeah,
I mean, I think safety is a great example, Stephen, because we were lacking there
Yeah.
significantly,
yeah,
and unfortunately, it took something to get us to address it.
and it usually does, right?
Yeah.
It's, I mean, and again, not trying to throw it to you, Molly, but I think there's almost a certain segment every so often to the board, it's almost like, okay, this meeting, we're going over these certain policies, just again, an over, more of a check off, like everybody, you're all informed, this is what we're doing.
Okay, and that can make sense. I mean, and this language here is fine because it says personnel policy is not specified.
Yeah, not
by the board.
specified by the board.
And we do already have a full set that is specified by the board. There are revisions being made right now to come back to the board to do exactly what you said. That, and it would be reviewed at this committee meeting first. I just wanted to ask, you know, kind of just make sure that everybody was on the same page with that one.
But when we are put on this board, we should either get a link to a Google or some sort of area where all of the documents are that we should know about. And, or a binder, I don't know, that's old school, whatever the case is, whatever the board has adopted, we should like, and that's what, when I started, Charles gave me a binder of stuff. So I don't know if we're doing that, if there's like orientation that needs to be happening, that's not happening.
And we've talked, yeah. go
Yeah,
ahead.
and that's addressed in here too, I guess should have called that out, where it talks about new board members having an orientation with CEO and legal counsel. And I think part of this effort is getting our hands around sort of the universal policies that we have and making sure that the board is aware that the policies exist, right? Like the unsolicited funding was a great example. We had a policy that the board adopted years ago that just kind of got put on the shelf and nobody pulled it out when we get these requests. And creating this list, and I agree, and that's what there's a schedule 1 to this, that sort of the idea was. We list all these policies so you know they exist, and then we could easily create a share file or a link where as a new board member, you could have access to those should you wanna. Like this document, every board member should read and be familiar with. The rest of the policies, you should know they exist, and if you have a question, know where you can go to look at it to get an answer. I should jump to 3.02.
Yeah, so that's actually with my notes, that's the next one I have too.
Could I jump on one just while, because we just
Sure.
went through, but on that, on page 10, on the policy agenda, can we just make sure it marries up with whatever we discussed between the CEO and the chair responsibility?
And on, yes, back to that, I think it also, it says any board member who wishes to place an item on the board or committee agenda shall contact the officer. Contact the office of the CEO or chair, or request during board comments and requests for agenda items, right? Isn't that what our agenda is set up for?
So it used to be much more explicit that could be a part of that agenda item. Now it's more for announcements. I went on a travel trip or,
But Eddie has asked for agenda items during that.
So we used to solicit them. The agenda used to solicit requests for agenda items. Part of the issue was, if you get requests for 10 items and trying to figure out,
You can't keep
we
up.
want a 6-hour meeting, right? And so it's almost easier if somebody can reach out to the CEO or the chair, have that discussion offline of, okay, how, is this something that has to happen next month? Can we push it down the road a little bit because we've got a full agenda coming up next month? Practically, that's, I think, is a little bit easier way to handle it, but we can craft it however we'd like.
Sometimes you think of it and you just want to say it and you're hoping that. But yes, ideally you are organized enough that you email the CEO, but just a thought.
So I would say we don't, my recommendation would be we don't solicit agenda item requests as part of that agenda item, but realize that that's part of what that agenda item is, and people bring them up and they'll be duly noted and considered when that happens.
Well, can we just say or at a board meeting?
Yeah.
Yep.
Page 15. policy 2.02, which is compensation and evaluation of CEO. This is similar to what we talked about on page 6 of the performance and compensation reviews where we it says on page 6, the board shall consider recommendations of the executive and legislative committee. I just want to add that in here, so it's just consistent.
Like it. Very good.
My next comment's on 3.02, page 17, or. page- Yep, page 17, number 1. I think this just needs some additional revision to contemplate how my relationship with the RCBA is different than the LBCBA's in-house legal relationship. Like I report to, work with the chair. I represent the CEO in his capacity of the CEO as long as he and the organization align, but I'm not the CEO's attorney. I represent the board. So
Okay.
just to make it.
You'll clean that up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same, section 4.04. That's an LBCBA creature that we probably don't need. We don't have IP that is
Oh,
ever
yeah.
necessitated to cease and desist, but.
We would love for people to use our IP.
Try to steal it.
Yeah,
Doesn't happen.
steal away.
So I think we pull that out.
It's a compliment. Okay.
And same 4.05. Realistically, obviously instituting any litigation is gonna come to the board. There's not gonna be a scenario where I'm gonna wanna do that on an emergency basis and like that before. Jumping ahead, if nobody has any other comments to section 6.01. And I know Molly, you had some comments on this, it just sort of reflecting that we have a code of conduct and conflict of interest for staff. Board is obviously governed by NRS chapter 281A, with public officials for the purposes of ethics and conflicts and disclosures.
So yeah, as we go through this, there were a couple of things, starting really with 6.02, which is notification of violations, and it says any board member, or officer, or employee who becomes aware of any violation or suspected violation of the code of ethics will report such alleged violation in writing to the general counsel. But it doesn't then say what the general counsel. Well, it says general counsel shall report that alleged violations to the chair. And that any violation or suspected violation involving the general counsel themselves need to be reported to the ethics. But so it gets reported to the chair and then nothing happens.
Because you have to go to the ethics, you have to file official ethics.
Yeah, exactly. So Ben and I were talking about it, that it may actually be better that, we just need a discussion of what needs to happen. Generally, we take the position if somebody has an ethics violation that they are notifying anybody about the board, that they be told they have to notify the Commission of Ethics. Because that is the enforcing body. That is, it's hard for us in that position to be placed into a position where we would be notifying others, because everybody on the board is technically our client. And so, I don't know, weigh in, Ben, how you think, but that was my first thought on this ethics portion. And that ethics statute should really hold in place for much of these policies that are here. And then there's also some that we would want to make sure are not in any way conflicting with our CBAs. There's a difference between a board member, for example, nepotism, a board member and a senior staff member than it is maybe between different staff members that don't report to each other. We have instances where two people of the same family might work for the RCBA and have for years. So that shouldn't, I just want to make sure that there's always consistency here.
So I think the comment there is we will sort of work together
Clean it up.
with our policies, yes, next round, so to change some of this. And clean it up to match what we have in place.
I don't see it in here, and maybe missed it, but I don't think we should be able, page 23, yeah. I don't think we should be able to recuse ourselves unless from a vote, unless it meets one of these standards. I've found on other boards that they've been able to recuse themselves for no reason, or to abstain for no reason, and that you can't do that at the county commission, because we have it written specifically.
So you really can't do that on any public boards. There's a statute that says.
There is.
There's a policy of the
I
state that,
need to find that statute, that's awesome, thank you.
the state's policy is that people in these positions should vote,
Yes.
that's what they're there for.
Okay, good,
And unless they meet one of these reasons, they have to vote.
all right, yay. But everything else looks fine to me on this. Any other board comments or questions? Good job, team.
So I guess the next question is what are next steps? Should Molly and I revise this and bring this
Yes.
back to this committee,
No. You should revise it and bring it back to the board,
to the full board?
right? Or do you want to do more vetting?
Go to the board.
I'm good with it going to the board. I don't know if you wanted to, other than calling another meeting, just, are you able to just go, hey, this look good, do it through email? Or does that constitute a meeting?
So I think I could send it to all of you and say, if you have any comments, send them to me.
Perfect.
And then if there are things you want addressed, then I will address those and that will be included with what's in the board. Like, we're not gonna do anything as a group.
Yeah.
But I could
Right.
send it to each of you individually and say, if you have anything additional, let me know.
Cause then I like that, just going right to the board. That's,
Okay.
Is there any official action you need on this, or do you feel good about the direction you've received?
I think we're pretty good with the direction. Maybe a motion to,
Bring it back to the full board?
yeah, revise as discussed and bring back to the full board.
I apologize as on call. Can I ask?
Yeah.
We already talked about, like, part of this conversation was just sort of how things happened in the winter of, this, and how we might have to deal with any investigations in the future. Did we get into that here?
That's coming back, right? Because that's a separate policy, Molly, that's coming back to us? Cause that's not in here.
So, yeah, so investigations with respect to, for example, it depends upon what kind of investigation it is. But there are certain points in here that are discussing about CEO and the fact that the board supervises the CEO. It does not, these policies do not address those types of investigations. Those policies have been reviewed and are in process to come back to this committee and then the board.
Does RC or does LBCA have that in there? They don't.
No, I think those would be considered employment policies and sort of part of that universe of.
An HR policy, not a board policy and procedure.
It still is adopted by the board, so Molly's bringing it back to us.
So
Yes.
we're gonna have an HR policy to review at this committee separately. But that's an HR policy.
So it depends upon, and maybe further discussion of this, we might need to talk exactly what your overall concerns are. If there are definitely policies already in place and adopted by the board that will be reviewed and by this committee and possibly revised that address harassment and discrimination complaints, and those types of things, and that's when investigations occur. Part of what you're talking about, I think, maybe, these, and what we also discussed about were the fact that there are ethics policies in here. And if there is a report of an ethics violation, what happens with that? And the discussion while you were out was, that's the purview and the jurisdiction of the agency, the Ethics Commission, is to
So an
handle
ethical
those types of
concern
things.
goes to the Commission on Ethics.
And so we are gonna clean up and put forward what we think that, that if there are reports of that to any board member, the chair, legal counsel, that person is told that they can go to the ethics commission because that's the agency that.
Well, what if,
handles those things.
but what if a board member makes an unruly comment to a staff member? That's an ethics violation?
So that, yeah, so, the board and step in, because that's actually a board issue, depends upon what the comment is. If it is a harassment discrimination, from my perspective, you have to do your own investigation. Did it occur? Because if it wasn't in an open meeting, for example, we would find out if we would do the investigation just like we would any other employment investigation and make a determination whether or not the comment actually was made. From that point, what happens, because we don't have, and Ben can probably talk about how anybody from this board could discipline a fellow board member. That might have, it's not within our purview.
That would go here, right?
Yeah, it could.
So I guess, Chair, and I apologize again for being gone for this. A lot of the conversations stem from, we need tightened up policies to guide us. And after what happened this winter, I want to make sure we have something as a board that can guide us moving forward. Should it be on, on our vendors, that work, government relations, legal, should it be the CEO that reports directly to us or us as board members? I think we need a policy that guides us on those types of things. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. So in the, I guess where that would be, that would go. The code of conduct and conflicts of interest policy, the 6.01, it's not in there. So it could be simple as creating an additional item that says the board will follow the same HR policies as the staff, or do you know what I'm saying? Like,
So we can add the language,
Yeah.
because I do think it's helpful to, because we don't have authority necessarily at this, to take out an elected. There's other aspects to that.
but a behavior, the expectation of behavior, right? Put in there. Even if, I know you're saying on the flip side, how do we enforce it? But I think putting in there, we could keep each other in check that way. With board members I can't call Christina, I need to call Mike. That should be a policy, right? Like,
I don't think we have that established, do we? I think what's understood. What you should and shouldn't do, but I don't think there's anything that precludes a board member.
that's also in our board policies, if you want to copy the county commission's policy. I look at that document all the time, so.
And there were also,
What's the recourse for somebody that does it?
I mean, they're elected, so it's not a ton of recourse, but it's a policy that you cannot go around Eric and ask staff to do things for you. And if it takes more than 2 hours, it has to go on a board agenda for us to approve the work. So there is like some checks and balances that at least Eric or staff can point to, I'm not doing that because it's in your rules and you can't do this. So, but yeah, if people misbehave, which people do, it's tough to enforce it. But still, it's an expectation.
So I like where you're going, and I think there needs to be clearly defined, expectations of board members in their code of conduct, as well as our vendors that work for RSCBA, because those apply to them as well. And of course, there's that piece. And I do want us to have something in here that, and then Molly, I'm, where it goes, I think, I'm willing to hear your advice. But, someone says something that Eddie did, okay, that goes to Alexis and what does
The
that process
investigation
look
process.
like?
But she's bringing that back, right? You're bringing that to us?
Yes.
Yeah, that is.
But it's not an HR thing, because is it an HR thing?
So he's saying that we do have HR policies related to that.
Board members.
With respect to when board members are subject to that. But what we could do is take those policies that are already in place and so it's very clear. And, because as we talked about, you'll get this binder of board policies as a new member to the board, set those expectations.
Yeah.
Here, so that everybody knows, and then, that obviously can be subject to revision as well as necessary.
And we just adopted at the county commission a anti-harassment, anti-bullying policy that included Board of County Commissioners and included all of our appointees. So that may be another thing that we should add
We should look at
You
it
know.
for sure.
if we want to make sure we're keeping the board in check.
Can you send that to me?
Yeah.
So, but that's something that, I know I spoke with Ben and Molly about this. I do want us to have a conversation about that process. Because retroactively, I have critiques on the process as it stands today, and I know you're working on it. But if we put it into our policies and procedures, right, we button it up, we apply it to all. We have a very defined process that's, frankly, that was one of the reasons I brought up our policies and procedures, wanting them to be reformed, that we have a process about complaints and investigations in here.
So does Molly, speaking from personal experience, is it being addressed, the policy as they exist today of the chair's authority to make decisions on behalf of the CEO?
So it depends upon, as the policy is written today, it depends upon who the complaint is about as to who would have authority at all.
Right.
So any staff member that there's a complaint about,
Right.
ultimately for staff, you are that authority.
Right.
For that, as it is because you report to the board, the policies are currently written that the chair has authority with respect to that.
And the reason I said just put it out there, I think we're all thinking it, just no one's saying it, is if tomorrow someone sent an anonymous letter about me and the chair, with the support of the chair of this committee, said we're putting him on leave, the rest of the board has no say.
And that is how it's written right now.
Yep.
So that couldn't be, and that decision is there because, that is how it's written right now. That is subject to revision.
That's the question I'm asking, is basically, is that part of this, and obviously I'm
It can be.
worried about myself, but.
Okay, but I don't want it to be, like, for me, Molly,
You want it to be about it.
it's not can. I want it to be in there, right? I want us to have the policy in these procedures. And I have a certain perspective on it, but it might not be what Stephen believes, and that's okay. We need to have that debate as board members to put together a policy. But we need to have a policy and procedure about investigations, about complaints, and yes, about anonymous complaints, because I've made it known, I personally do not want to entertain anonymous complaints when they come to us.
And I think that should be a board discussion because there's been a change in that. It's philosophy wise, like when I was at the city of Reno, we created a hotline for anonymous complaints because there was a feeling that people could not speak up and they were going to lose their jobs. And so we take those seriously and investigate them. And I think the county commission, we have the same deal as we get an anonymous complaint, not public comment, someone saying, I heard that this person, not that, but like if we do get an anonymous complaint, we do investigate it. We take them seriously at all levels of the organization, but it's a discussion to have.
It is a
For sure.
discussion to have, and there is just from the legal perspective, an employer would be put on notice of any potential issue, even if they receive the complaint through an anonymous complaint. So, meaning that if we are put on notice, we get an anonymous complaint of something occurring and you don't investigate it, and it turns out to be true and something happens to whoever that anonymous complainer is, or something else happens to where it ends up in litigation, we will have been charged with having knowledge and failing to take action, and we have no defense to the harassment or discrimination occurring in the workplace that was complained about. And so that, from my perspective, is wanting to maintain that defense. That's why in private practice, at the county, at the city, they have these, and we have it here too, hotlines where people can report conduct that is concerning to them and report these because of the, alleged fear of retaliation.
But it's a discussion, it's a policy discussion to have.
So I think for direction for legal going forward on these policies, so. If we're talking about CEO complaints, there are policies that are part of the HR policies that address that process. If what you're saying is you would like that process pulled into this document and reflected here, we can certainly do that. To try to not have to come back to this committee again, or maybe we want to, if this is something we're gonna discuss, should we pull the policies and procedures as they exist today on that topic into these board policies and then present them at the next board meeting, and that can be a part of that discussion? Or do we keep them separate and dealt with as part of the review of the HR and employment policies? So we pull them into this, or do we leave them where they are? And if we pull them into this, we want to have another meeting to
Yes.
discuss them
We
further,
need another meeting if you're gonna pull into this.
or do we just pull them in as written? And then sort of throw it out to the board?
Just don't, I think, and this kind of evolved too, Eddie, when you were out for a second, because we got into. What layer, like, it just kind of hit me like, where does this reside, right? Because this is an issue, it's like, I don't know, there's a semi goes, they almost want it to be part of this, what we're currently talking about. But you really do, there's so many other layers of, when we talk about safety policy, where does that fall? That probably doesn't fall here. I get into the whole, I know that there's an employee handbook, right?
Yes.
For a number of these things that doesn't necessarily all fall into this. But I don't know, on that, so going back, and again, this is somewhat selective of what you've seen LVCBA, that what we want to kind of clean up, but does the LVCBA comparison of what you've been looking at, is there a piece there on how they handle anonymous CEO complaint?
No, there's not, and I think, and I haven't seen their employment policies, their HR, I don't know, but in this document, no. I think, though, to Mr. Allister's point, when it occurs and we have a policy that's part of the HR employment policies that the board hasn't necessarily, they don't know about, or they haven't vetted them, or they haven't reviewed them recently, and we pull the policy out of the drawer and proceed per the policy, it may make sense to have it in this, at least that particular document, or that particular policy in this document, so the board's aware of it.
You're reviewing one, why wouldn't you review them all? Right? I mean,
Right, but that's what we're doing, but my question is, where should that policy reside? Does it stay in HR and employment, or do we pull it into this so it's front and center from?
I think it is in both for two reasons. First, I think the board needs to know about it. I think the board needs to know, goes to both behavior of everybody who it applies to, themselves as well as anybody they supervise. So they know exactly what that process is. But the other part of that, it also resides as the HR policies, because every employee of the RCBA has to know. And has to have those complaint avenues, et cetera. And so I think it goes actually to both places and not just one place, and they're consistent. There's other policies in here, like we talked about, there is a code of conduct for staff. And so we talked about making sure that those are consistent. They would still be here, but it also applies to staff as well. So it's part of their overall policies too.
All right,
So my hope is that pull it in. I think, but like chair, we need a separate meeting.
Yeah.
To,
if we pulled it in, we need to review that.
and if we're gonna have a separate meeting, we might as well review the changes that we recommended today.
Yeah,
Um,
at that point.
That way we can bring in more succinct, and then I would ask Molly, when you pull those in, can you guys look at? I want that policy to be all board members, right? Because I think there's a class of people, there's the board members and CEO, they're a separate class. Then we have our vendors, right, or our staff, not staff, because you guys are contract right,
Correct.
staff, and then staff is separate, that's an HR policy that falls underneath our CEO, our HR, and then might need us at some point with legal. That's a totally separate thing, so I would like that to be brought in here, and I would like for you to, again, I want to button up the policy, because I get what you have said about law demanding an investigation, but on the flip side, when you investigate something, if you're investigating claims from, you know, from Russian cyber bots, we have looked at it, we have no idea where this came from, and they're not willing to identify themselves, we've investigated, we cannot verify, done, right? Like, there needs to be a quick adjudication. And that's my request to you, how do we quickly adjudicate that to move on? And not make it an actual, like, in-depth hiring outside for an investigation when there's no named party. And I know that's my opinion, and some people might disagree with that, and that's gonna have to be a debate of the board. That's what I'd like you to bring forward for a conversation.
Yeah, what's the current practice? And then the board can make that change. If they want.
I think what's so unique here is we're in the private hat. Private, you know, we very much do what you're saying, Wally, that go to a hotline. And we're gonna investigate, no matter how. But it's not public,
That's the.
it's not in a public forum,
This is the joy of that job. Public dollars.
yeah,
It's
but
in
it's-
California, you don't do this to CEOs. In California, you have closed door sessions when you do your reviews. You don't do them like Nevada's laws are
Yeah.
crazy and the pressure of public officials like this. Agreed.
It's the issue with the statute and, the reviews and everything. that
I think
happens
it's-
on the first-
again,
Sir.
speaking from my position, is that I'm an employee of the board.
Yeah.
In that instance, I'm an employee of one. That's the challenge.
Right.
Are we as board members considered employees? No. What are we considered then?
Board members.
Director, yeah.
Yeah,
There are
Directors.
policies that apply, right?
yes.
But is there any way to hold each other accountable?
So,
That was the, yeah,
281A, the ethics statutes,
Just
and the
ethics.
ethics commission.
Unless it falls under criminal conduct.
Right. And if, you know, if there's a complaint about a board member. The statute doesn't provide a way for us to remove board members. Or to discipline board members, right? So
But you can investigate board members and we've seen that.
absolutely, you
We've
can,
seen a council member being investigated and it's a public document and it was in the RDJ. So I mean, we could do the same thing here. We also saw that at the school board,
Doesn't
so.
statute afford, statute affords the ability for elected bodies to remove a member.
I don't, like, can the county commission kick off a commissioner? I don't
No,
think
but
so, I mean.
I think
that's-
the AG can. They're in the state law, the AG can kick us out, but
Maybe
I'm so sorry, I have 1 o'clock
Sorry.
and I would love to eat just a few bites before that. But, yeah.
Yeah, those were, that was.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think we have direction, if we could get a motion to revise as directed and bring back to this committee, we'll get working on that.
Okay.
I'm sure I move that we revise as directed and reassemble for review.
Thank you.
so
Thank you. Motion and second, and all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. That passes unanimously. We'll now move on to comments from the committee members and or CEO president. Any committee member comments?
The only add, in a big touch on it, the fact that we do handle legislative affairs and that, and we're going into a season, what, 2025? I think, I'm not saying sooner than later, like it has to be next month, but
We
I think we
should.
ought to probably get it on the radar by fall.
Well, the next month, we should talk about legislative.
Okay, let's have that
issues.
part of the meeting, because I just think,
Yeah,
right? And honestly, even having Jesse here, if he's, or whoever is representing our seniors, I think it's time to start the
yep,
discussion.
I would just say, because that's where, we're late.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
ballgame already, so.
Okay, do you have anything for us, Mike?
I don't think.
Okay, comments from the floor by the public, anything?
No public comment at this time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for a great meeting.
you, Sharon.
Yeah. It's a messy process.